This is an audio recording of the LendIt Fintech Weekly News Show. The show is streamed live on LendIt TV, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter at 5 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday. In this fast-paced show, the LendIt News team and a special guest discuss the most important fintech news stories of the past week. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the LendIt Fintech Weekly News Roundup. My name is Peter Renton, Chairman and Co-founder of LendIt Fintech, alongside my good friend and colleague, Todd Anderson. How are you doing, Todd?
I'm good, Peter. How are you?
Doing great. And we have our special guest today, Tim Lee from Alchemy. How are you doing, Tim?
Doing well. Always happy to be here. Thank you.
Yep, great. Great to have you back. Well, we got a lot of news to cover. Let's get right into it. I want to start with Nubank. I think we started with Nubank last week, but we didn't have any details then. So we, they filed their F1 because it's a foreign company. It's basically an S1, but because they're not a US company, it's called an F1. We learned a lot. They're trying to, well, obviously they're doing an IPO, targeting a $50 billion valuation. But the thing that I was just most struck with, there was a couple of things in their F1 that, like, they have 48 million customers, and we've been tracking. They crossed 20 and they crossed 30, and 48 million customers now, 35 million monthly active. But the thing that was most astounding in the entire document, and I didn't read every word, but I skimmed the whole thing. Cost of customer acquisition, $5. There is not another digital bank on the planet, I don't think, that's got that. So they're such a strong company, and they don't. I know they don't spend. And David has said they don't spend on money on marketing. They rely on word of mouth, and you can see that's true. $5.
Yeah. Yes. The funny thing is that there's not many that can do that. They're the first. They were the first in Brazil. They've made such inroads that it's become such a brand name and synonymous with fintech in Brazil that it's funny because their success makes it significantly harder for others who need to probably spend 3, 4, 5 times the amount of marketing dollars, probably. 10 times, 10 times than Nubank would ever think about spending. The cost $5. I mean, you're probably the average one is probably 300 to 400, if not 500 per customer.
Yes,
it's crazy.
The credit card space, you can easily spend $700 to $800 per credit card customers, right? With JP Morgan Chase of the world. But to put into perspective, and by the way, congrats to Nubank. I know the ex CFO, good friend of mine. He lives in Los Angeles. Hopefully, he's happy.
Hopefully, he's got some
Brazil,
stocks.
Got some stocks as well, right? There are just about 300 million people in Brazil, and these guys got 45 million
48
customers.
Yep,
48 exactly. That's insane. That's domination. We have more than close to 20%, 10% of the entire population that uses your product. It's insane.
It's like JP Morgan in the US was 320 million people, 60 million by JP Morgan. Right. I mean, it's on that scale.
Yeah, it really is. And they're adding 2 million a month. So
that's right. That's JP Morgan Chase's speed as well. When I worked at JP Morgan Chase, it was 2 million, but they had tried a bunch of 1.5 million every month as well. But it's unbelible. But JP Morgan Chase for sure doesn't have a $5 per customer acquisition cost for sure.
I challenge any fintech on the planet to come up with that kind of customer acquisition. I think it's a phenomenon, and that's why we talk about them a lot here. We had David Velez, the CEO, on our last LATAM event, and trying to get him to come to our USA event next year. Now that they're going to be traded in the US. So, anyway, let's move on. Other big news, we're going into the crypto space right away, or the stablecoin space. So the Biden administration, we knew this was coming. The president's working group on financial markets, which is there's some pretty heavy hitters in this group, like Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell. They've basically called for stablecoin regulation. They want Congress to act. Now, Congress isn't very good at acting, that's for sure. But they basically have said if Congress doesn't act, we're going to, existing regulatory authorities will act. They want stablecoin issuers to be insured depository institutions, which is a huge change from where they are. They want AML enforcement for anyone who's doing issuing a digital wallet. So this is pretty heavy-handed in a lot of ways. And it doesn't look like it's not like crypto crashed or anything, or stablecoins suddenly went out of favor when this came down. But they've made it clear that they want this to be a regulated space.
Yeah, I feel like there's just a lot of mixed messages between the White House, the SEC, right? Any of these regulatory bodies. On one hand, SEC threatening to sue Coinbase because they don't want them to collect interest on these investments. On the other hand, the Federal Reserve wants to rush some kind of a version of digital currency to compete with other people in the world. We talk about this stuff in our fintech class at USC almost every week. It just feels like we don't, it's like, what does our government really want? Regulation, killing it completely, or actually regulate it and give us some rule book to play within? But certainly I feel like, we want innovation, but on the other side, we don't want people just to go crazy with this stuff. I'm getting a lot of mixed messages from the government lately.
I think they're struggling with it, to be honest with you. I don't think it's I think they're giving us mixed messages in many ways because they're not sure themselves. And I think there's lots of different pieces to this. There's the stablecoin piece, then there's also the DeFi angle in terms of you want to go out and talk about the broader industry. And I don't think they have a full grasp of how can all these pieces play together when you have to include things like KYC, AML, and certain regulatory requirements. When some of these players or the crypto enthusiast is certainly wanting outside of that. They want anonymity. They want decentralization. So I think we're looking at, kind of this mixed bag of things for a little while now, because frankly, I don't think much of Congress understands this.
Yeah.
And so you're probably going to get to some vague bill or something, and they're going to kind of kick it to the financial regulators. The FDIC has said some nice things and some reasonable and level-headed things, and then the SEC hasn't. So I think we're going to have this tug and pull and kind of mixed bag for a little while before we get real clarity, which is really a shame for a lot of the companies.
Yeah, and it's also it's coming down along party lines where the Democrats say we just got to protect consumers at all costs. It doesn't matter what the consequences are, and the Republicans, with Congressman Henry wrote he wrote a piece about this report, basically saying we can't stifle innovation. We've got to, the U.S. has been the leader in financial services for decades, and we don't want to squander that because this is, so I think I'm coming down on Congressman McHenry's side right here. We really, because the thing is, we live in a world that is pretty easy to go move to another country. Have you can actually your headquarters in another country. No, we can all work remotely from anywhere. So it's I'm hoping that they don't come down too heavy-handed. Anyway, let's move on to climate change, because this is obviously the topic of the week. We had the COP26 summit kickoff in Glasgow. I think it was just over the weekend, right? So I know that they're still, apparently it's 2 weeks. I know that all the world leaders have left, but they're the people who do the real work are still there doing the real work. But Mark Carney, who used to be the head of the Central Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, now he works for the UN, and he has basically this group inside the UN where he's got a bunch of financial services companies to sign on. these companies represent $130 trillion in assets. Now, I don't know how many assets are in the world, but it's like I'd got to think it's a pretty decent percentage, I would think.
It's a good chunk.
It's a good chunk. So basically, talking like banks are now going to these organizations are going to incorporate, carbon emissions and climate change into their lending decisions, into all areas of their business. So the reason I wanted to bring it up this week is because we haven't even started this in like climate tech and fintech. We've barely started, and I think it's going to be massive. It's going to be it's just going to be such a massive industry, and we're just getting going.
I feel like about 20-30% of the $1 or $2 trillion climate bill that's being negotiated in Congress is earmarked for green energy, specifically solar. Alchemy, actually, we are launching 4 solar panel financing companies on our platform.
Wow.
And one of them is actually in Latin America. So these are huge things happening. I think everybody's waiting for the climate bills to come in. Think about $1 trillion flushing the entire solar market. Somebody's got to run that finance and the installation, of course. So we are hurrying up here in our 4 walls to finish out the solar lending platform for a lot of the fintechs or solar techs, if you will.
And it's becoming very, very apparent pretty quickly that if you don't go in this direction, it's going to be a negative impact on your business. You have the older generation, those that have just retired or looking at retire might not think of it as core, though they're are certainly a significant amount that do. But the younger generation are, I mean, Peter, you say many times how conscious your children are, and they're pretty young. And the pressure is just going to keep ratcheting up on doing things in a way that is sound, that offsets the carbon imprint. And without things like this, soon it's going to be kind of this list of basically those that are climate friendly and doing things quote unquote the right way, and basically a blacklist of those that aren't. That'll find soon enough if they don't. That they need to get their act together quickly.
Eventually, they're going to have to. I mean, they're even talking about, like big steel and concrete making companies that do a tremendous amount of damage to the environment, but they're talking about really getting those kinds of companies doing different processes, making it harder, more expensive for them if they don't change. And
I think South Korea, Poland, Chile has made promises in this conference to stop financing coal production or financing new coal plants, right? So some of these nations are really coming to the table to reduce carbon footprint.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I know you can argue whether banks should be really making policy decisions, but banks have the power to end this right now. If the banks of the world came together and said we're not going to finance coal.
Yeah, I think Larry Fink of BlackRock made a lot of statements about not investing, in carbon positive companies. Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. Next story is just quantifying the surge of VC interest in fintech, which we have talked about many times on the show here, and it continues. But we have some numbers. Q3 from CB Insights coming in with $31 billion raised across 1,185 deals. Of those, 94 were more than 100 million. So this, we're on track to do 120 billion this year. This is like more than the last 2 years, 3 years combined. So we've known this is happening, and now CB Insights are providing the raw data. It is boom time in fintech still.
What's funny is that it felt a lot more apparent last summer, not this past summer, but into fall last year and into the winter, about the talk of a bubble that seems to have completely disappeared, even though the numbers just keep skyrocketing. It's like all talk of bubble has disappeared. Yet there's some of it, but almost every day I watched CNBC, Bloomberg pretty much daily, and there was a lot of fear late last year into early this year. And that fear is just not as nearly as apparent now. It's maybe, occasionally they'll cover it, but that's how kind of I gauge where things are going. And then you see the raw data that a report like this does.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just staggering how much money is going into fintech, how much cheap capital was out there the last few years, and now how much of that is being put to work.
Yeah. I mean, our government kept on printing money, right? That money's got to go somewhere into the stock market, which we're hitting all-time highs, right? 60-second times that NASDAQ or one of these exchanges went to all-time highs. And obviously that money has to flush to be invested somewhere. That's $10 billion a month of the investment. That's insane. I mean, like, we're minting unicorns left and right. There's 100 unicorns right now in fintech space, but I'm not surprised. It's mainstream now, as opposed to a fad maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah, when you see companies like Nubank, I think that sort of lifts those sort of companies lift all boats because they're 50 billion valuation there, and they're going to be the most valuable financial institution in all of Brazil. And that's, I think those sorts of things, we see what's possible with that. So moving on to another really hot topic, buy now, pay later just continues to be hot. So we've talked about super apps. Klarna is the latest. We've had PayPal launching a super app. I'm not sure who else have launched them, but
Coinbase,
yeah. So Klarna want to have the shopping super app, and I haven't downloaded it and had a good look, but it sounds great in principle. Like do all of your shopping, not just with Klarna. Not just stores that are partnered with Klarna, but do all your shopping. You got all of all the coupons and deals that can be in there. You can manage obviously your payments. You can put anything on, buy now, pay later. You've got all your loyalty programs. You can track deliveries. All this inside the one app. And one of the things that's really cool is that as I said, you can go with any store. They're working with virtual one-time use card numbers. So.
Right.
But you can then put in those numbers trigger the buy now pay later program there, and it's all manageable in the app. This is I don't know if there's just going to be one winner on the super app front, but when it comes to this, but Klarna, and we know how many users they have, they're doing a phenomenal job.
I think we should get rid of the term super app because it implies that you can just do everything in that app, which I mean, I haven't met.
App.
I haven't met. Yeah, I mean, it's it's Klarna. It's a super shopping app. That's what it is. I mean, I don't know. It feels like it's more of a marketing ploy than anything else. But it's the shifting credit offerings these days. It's fascinating to watch how specific they're getting, how ubiquitous they're getting. I mean, it's so easy, so simple. Everyone's offering it, whether it's a Chase credit card, you can then do that pay later that one big transaction on your credit card. It's fascinating to see how credit is evolving. I don't think any credit product itself will win, but I think the credit will continue to shift around into different forms.
I want to say buy now, pay later is a credit bubble. Shifting this stuff out. Enjoy now, pay later is ingrained in people's head. But you read some of the latest reports, the default rates are doubling, tripling. Right at the end of the day, the creditor is going to have to say, wait a minute, hold on a second. Right, this is all great. You're putting all the volume on our balance sheet, but the default rates are uncontrollable. We gotta now start underwriting a little bit more. I think there's going to be a come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, credit. For sure. But I think there will be that. But the fact is, consumers love this product. They may not. They should be controlled in how they use it. But that's where what the lending space has been working on for the last decade is instant underwriting. I mean, I think that I think it was Upstart. I think I heard Dave Gerard say that. I think was it 80 or 90%? I can't remember, but it was a huge percentage of Upstart customers now that completely automated underwriting. That's what we need to get to, so we can. People like this. They might say, okay, you can't buy those $250 pair of shoes, but you can buy $100 pair of jeans, whatever. That's that they want. I agree with you, Tim. I think the fact that some of these companies do no underwriting And I think that's
It's
That's
too
where
deep.
that's where
gonna
it
go
needs
away.
It's a little
to.
bit too deep.
Yeah, the shift needs to change. The a bit more standard across the platforms. They also need to give people credit for good payments, not only just bad payments. Right now, it's very
Mhm.
uneven, and I think
Yeah.
they need just some standardization across.
Mhm.
Kind of this here's the buy now pay later
Yeah.
standard that they
Remember,
need to at least reach.
remember back in the days when Prosper Lending Club was dominating the personal lending space, there was a whole hoopla about, hey, people are double borrowing. I'm borrowing from Lending Club, borrowing from
Yeah.
Prosper, and borrowing from it. And then there's kind of a credit loss bubble. I don't think there's anybody tracking all the BNPL activities, right? How do we know this consumer is not doing 10 of these BNPLs that
Right.
make
Well, if they're
them
not,
less
yeah.
affordable?
Yeah, if it's not equally reported, then we have no idea.
Right, exactly. And I think some of these buy now, pay later guys are having a little bit of problem reporting back to the credit bureaus because the credit bureau needs to catch up on what this is.
Well, some of them just make it as part of their. I think it was Afterpay that make it as part of their marketing pitch that they don't report anything.
Right, but
So
if you don't report, we don't know, and then everybody else giving these guys same person buy now, pay later. The ability to pay it is going to be blown out of water. Anyways,
and all everyone sees is, oh, there's no interest. But then all of a sudden, you have too many. You miss a payment or two, and now you have interest, and then you have an annoyed customer all at the same time who's overextended himself and is mad for a variety of reasons. So it's part of it's just going through growing pains and figuring out where the markers are. And I think you'll probably see some regulatory action on BNPL sometime soon.
True.
Okay, so let's move on. I want to talk about an IPO that happened this week. Kakaopay, they're in South Korea. We don't very often talk about South Korea on the show here, but
no,
they're another phenomenon. They raised 1.3 billion at a 9 billion valuation. They went public in South Korea, so it's all in South Korean won, I think, is the currency. They're the largest payments app in South Korea by a long way. They basically, it started off as a messaging app. And then it's it's like kind of like WeChat did in China. They added payments, and now they've got 36.5 million users. Now I imagine that can't all be in South Korea. I just checked South Korea's population before we came on here, and it's like 50 something million. And so
50, 60 million.
Yeah, so it is. They're not. They are outside of South Korea. There's no question about that. But they've done very, very well. And I think you're going to have. I feel like a company that's dominating that area of the world outside of China. Ant Financial was one of their largest investors. They've done very well out of that investment. So you're going to have this whole Southeast Asia is still a huge market, relatively untapped, and Kakaopay is going after them.
I have never heard of this company, but good for them. That's incredible. 30 million users. It's insane.
Yeah. I don't have much to add on this one either.
Wow.
Yeah, that's okay. I wanted to put it in because I feel like we need to pay attention to some of these. Now that we don't go to China anymore, we need to pay attention to that part of the world. So, okay, we can move on though. I want to go back to regulation. This is a CNBC article that caught my eye just today, and talking about the headline is "DeFi: The Wild West of Crypto is next on regulators' hit list." And it really, DeFi has escaped a whole lot of when the regulators talk about Coinbase, they're talking about stable coins now. DeFi, they haven't really talked about it much, but there's in this piece, what I didn't realize was that there's this there was an AML watchdog financial action task force that released guidance on crypto last week, and basically they're talking about if you're we need to be able to control like the DeFi, it's decentralized finance. So sometimes it's there's no company that you can regulate. There's it's even like there's a oftentimes not clear leadership, but they're saying the people that start DeFi platforms, the founders need to have some basically they need to be held accountable. And so, DeFi, it is the Wild West. I mean, it's gone over $100 billion in locked up capital there. And it is no one, I mean, talk about if you can't regulate stable coins, you got no chance of regulating DeFi, because it's going to be much harder, because we don't know some of these places. Sometimes they're in like multiple countries. They're governing force. There's no easy way to regulate them.
I don't think DeFi, as it is currently constituted, is the DeFi that will come under a regulatory body. I think it's pieces of it will end up in the financial system, but the way in which it's currently designed with, total decentralization, like the regulators aren't going to allow that. There needs to be recourse. There needs to be understanding of who's doing what with what money. And I think we're probably a ways away from true clarity from the regulators, but there's no way they're just going to allow the current, setup of DAOs and stuff like that to fly easily without clear rules of here's the head and here's how the rest of the organization, at least from a recourse standpoint, because if something happens, someone has to be held liable.
That's right. This is Chris Larson's original vision. Remember Chris Larson?
Yep, sure.
Founders of Prosper. This DeFi stuff it's essentially peer-to-peer lending. You pour gasoline on it. My students are doing this, borrowing their coins in their wallet, lending them out to other people, earning interest and fees. It's absolutely insane, and there's no accountability. There's no note you need to sign or anything like that. It's just a contract on Ethereum, if you will.
Right.
I'm going to give this to you for 20 minutes. I'm going to earn 6% interest. God knows what the other person is doing using those coins. Probably betting on something else, even more, have an even riskier arbitrage.
Right.
But these kids are earning money. But sometimes I'll talk to my students and say, hey, I just lost a bunch of money because I didn't know what I was doing, because it sounded like I could borrow at 6%, but they charged me a $2,000 gas fee on my coins that I borrowed.
Right.
It's completely, just unregulated to no ends, but it's to me it's just straight up gambling.
Yeah,
nobody really knows.
There is certainly an element to that, and I think that it's gonna really get turbocharged once the proof of stake comes in versus the proof of work, which Ethereum has been based on now.
But there's billions being lent and borrowed, billions at any given time. And
it's gonna explode. I mean, like it could be 10x this time next year, where we are now, and then regulators are gonna be scratching their head. I mean, I don't envy them. It's a tough job. But anyway, I want to end on this story that actually originally I glossed over this, but I went back and looked, because this is a story from Australia, actually Australia and the US for that matter. This is the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, CBA. They're the largest bank in Australia. They have just over $1 trillion Australian dollars in assets, which is about, depending on the day, 750 billion in US dollars, which would make them the number 5 largest bank in the US. This is a large bank. They are the first large bank to offer crypto trading inside their banking app. Now, I think that's pretty cool. I mean, I went back and looked, and there's none of the American banks are offering this inside their app. This is the largest bank in Australia. They're offering, basically it's going to be like a Coinbase account. They got 10 different crypto assets, obviously the biggies like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Gemini is providing the custodian services. Chainalysis is providing the anti-fraud analysis there. And someone has to be first as the first big bank, and it's happening in Australia, and I think it's go the Aussies to take the lead here.
I don't think the U.S. banks might even be allowed to do something like this, but I mean, this is all this stuff is fascinating. Whether it's DeFi and how that can be regulated, crypto exchanges and trading inside bank apps, like. We're in a whole new world right now, and I think now I think regulators can do their part to help that world. They can also squash it, So I think it's a fine line. But I think we also need to let some of this play out to give us an understanding of where the borders can go. Because then you can ultimately kind of find the borders.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have no understanding where the borders could go out to, it makes it even harder to make a border that's fair. So to me, I think stuff like this is just fascinating, and good for them and good for Gemini and Chainalysis as well.
This whole thing just hasn't hurt the regular folks like you and I yet. Not like the 2008, 2009 downturn when everybody's in it together, right? Folks that are trading, betting, losing are folks that was sitting on coins already. This wealth they created didn't exist before. The only thing that I can hang my hat on is this ProShares, Bitcoin strategy ETF. That's a big deal a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yep.
They're trading at about $30, $40. I don't know how they're actually indexing against all the coins, but it's slowly coming. Even some of the biggest critics, like Jamie Dimon, for example, have softened his tone a little bit recently. We'll see.
I mean, what they're saying, what the Commonwealth Bank said is that they saw like hundreds of thousands of their own customers. They could tell by the outgoings of their credit cards and debit cards and bank
transaction data.
They're saying that they're sending this money to crypto exchanges.
That's right.
So may as well
hug them around and bring them back.
Exactly.
It's a smart move. Yeah, it's also looking at the data.
Yep. Exactly. Anyway, we are out of time. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Tim. Great chatting with you guys. And thank you to the audience for tuning in. We'll be back same time next week. Before we go, just one quick plug. Latin America, the hottest region of the world. LendIt Fintech Latam happening December 7th and 8th. Go to lendit.com. You got to be there.
Get your tickets now.
Get your tickets now, indeed. And with that, we will wish you a good afternoon, evening, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a good weekend.
See you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks again, Tim. Bye.
Bye.